Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Files wherever you are watching. In the news today, conservative activist Charlie Kirk fatally shot at Utah University. Charlie Kirk, 31-year-old conservative activist, speaker and founder of Turning Point USA, was fatally shot on September 10, 2025. While speaking at Utah Valley University UVU during an event held as part of his American Comeback Tour, the shooting occurred around 12:20 p.m. local time on the UVU campus, about 40 miles south of Salt Lake City. Approximately 3,000 people were in attendance. Kirk was speaking on a stage in a courtyard area under a tent. He was struck by a single bullet in the neck, reportedly fired from a rooftop nearly 200 yards away in the LaCie Center building. After the shot, the suspect, described as college-aged and blended in, fled by jumping off the roof and escaping into a neighboring area. Investigation by authorities, including the Utah Department of Public Safety, UVU police, local law enforcement, and the FBI, are collaborating on the case. A suspected high-powered bolt-action rifle has been recovered from a nearby wooded area. Two individuals were initially detained after the shooting but were later released after authorities found no evidence linking them to the killing. The shooter remains at large. His motive has not yet been determined. Official reactions from Utah Governor Spencer Cox called the killing a political assassination and condemned it as a direct threat to constitutional freedoms. President Donald Trump described Kirk as legendary, ordered U.S. flags to be flown at half-staff, and blamed what he characterized as radical left rhetoric for contributing to political violence. Political leaders across the spectrum expressed shock and condemnation, urging calm and calling for justice. The incident has intensified national concern over political violence and safety at political and public events, especially involving public figures with strong partisan followings. It also raises questions about security protocols for speaking events on university campuses. Charlie Kirk is survived by his wife, Erica Fransvi, and their two young children. At the time of his death, Kirk was 31 years old, shooting at Evergreen High School. One dead after self-inflicted wound. Multiple students injured. A shooting early Wednesday at Evergreen High School in Colorado left one student dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Two others remain in the hospital, one in critical condition. The shooter, a 16-year-old male student, opened fire at 12:24 p.m. at Evergreen High School. The person died later Wednesday night, having shot himself. Two other students were injured by gunfire and were treated at Common Spirit St. Anthony Hospital. One of these students is in critical condition. A fourth student was injured while fleeing, not by gunfire but during escape. This student self-transported to the hospital. Law enforcement response by the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office reports that calls about an active shooter came in around 12:30 p.m. Officers were on the scene in 2 minutes and had contact with the shooter within 5 minutes. Investigators say shootings occurred both inside and outside the school. Officers did not discharge their weapons during the encounter. Authorities plan to obtain search warrants for the shooters' home and locker as part of the investigation. Evergreen High School, which has about 900 students, was closed for the rest of the day. County-wide school athletics and activities for Wednesday were canceled. Students were released to reunification zones. Families gathered at Bergen Meadow Elementary to meet their children. Community members expressed shock. One ninth grader said he had been eating lunch outside when he heard 3 gunshots. A parent living in Evergreen commented that while she never thought something like this would happen there, she had a nagging sense that it eventually would. Official statements from Governor Jared Polis extended condolences to victims and families, calling the act of violence senseless and noting that schools should be safe spaces for students. The Jefferson County Education Association emphasized the trauma this brings, especially for Colorado communities already deeply affected by past school shootings, notably Columbine, calling for meaningful action to address gun violence in schools. The law enforcement investigation continues, gathering witness statements, processing evidence, and looking into motive. Emotional and mental health support is being mobilized for students, families, and the broader community. 24 years after 9/11's, Trump administration marks anniversary amid security. Symbolism and controversy, the 24th anniversary of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. The Trump administration led a series of memorials, pronouncements, and policy moves that underscored both remembrance and political overtones. The day's programming showed how the legacy of 9/11's continues to intersect with current tensions and controversies. Key events and ceremonies included the traditional memorial at the Pentagon outside the building was moved indoors into an internal courtyard amid elevated security concerns following recent political violence, including the killing of activist Charlie Kirk, President Donald Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Joint Chiefs Chair General Dan Kane attended. Trump used the occasion to reaffirm national unity, vow never to forget, and speak of continuing to defend freedom and the nation. He also made a public announcement that the late Charlie Kirk would receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. In New York City at the World Trade Center site, and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania site of Flight 93. Ceremonies included moments of silence, readings of names, wreath-laying, and participation by families of the victims. Political context and controversies include the recent assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk the day before had ripple effects. It increased security at ceremonies, influenced who would attend which events, and was tied into Trump's speeches. The administration is exploring taking greater control over the 9/11's memorial and museum at Ground Zero, currently operated by a public charity. The possible move to federal oversight or designation as a national monument has drawn both support from some victims' families and concern or resistance from others. Some of the voices and reactions this year included victims' families and survivors across ceremonies. Family members continued to emphasize the personal, enduring grief of 9/11's. Some wore T-shirts with images of lost loved ones. Others reflected publicly on how the passage of time hasn't dulled the pain. For many, the anniversary remains deeply emotional. Criticism and support for memorial control changes. Some among victims' families express support for more federal control of the Ground Zero memorial operations, seeing it as a way to ensure preservation and respect. Others worry about the implications, potential loss of independence, institutional overreach, or politicization of a space meant for mourning. In conclusion, the 24th anniversary of 9/11's under the Trump administration blended solemn remembrance with overt political symbolism. Security concerns, the recent death of a political activist, and efforts to reshape institutions tied to 9/11's together suggest the past remains very alive not only in collective memory, but in policy, symbolism, and political trajectories. As the nation observes this day, the way it recalls the past continues to reflect its present challenges. UK fires Ambassador to US Peter Mandelson over links to Jeffrey Epstein. The British government has dismissed Peter Mandelson from his post as ambassador to the United States after revelations about his past relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Prime Minister Keir Starmer took the decision on September 11, 2025. Amid growing political pressure, the revelations showed newly published emails from 2008 show Mandelson expressing support for Epstein. Shortly before Epstein was convicted in Florida on charges of soliciting a minor. Among those emails, Mandelson told Epstein to fight for early release and expressed that he felt hopeless and furious about Epstein's situation. Additional past materials resurfaced. A birthday book compiled in 2003 by Ghislaine Maxwell for Epstein's 50th birthday included a handwritten note from Mandelson calling Epstein his best pal. The Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office (FDO) stated that the depth and extent of Mandelson's relationship with Epstein was materially different from what was understood when he was appointed. His suggestion that Epstein's first conviction in 2008 was wrongful and should be challenged was also cited as new information. Mandelson expressed regret over his past relationship with Epstein, stating that he had relied on assurances of his innocence that turned out later to be horrendously false. He said he deeply regrets continuing the association for far longer than I should have done. He also expressed sympathy for Epstein's victims. This has led to political fallout and key reactions. Prime Minister Starmer initially defended Mandelson. On September 10th, Starmer told Parliament that victims were at the forefront of our minds and that he had confidence in Mandelson's role, but the new evidence became politically untenable. Foreign Office Minister Stephen Doty said the revelations meant that Mandelson's relationship with Epstein was far more serious than was known. Opposition parties, including the Conservatives and others, have called Mandelson's messages disturbing and sickening. There have been demands for investigations, including into whether diplomatic norms or codes of conduct were breached. Thank you for watching, but for now it's goodbye.